Money is the source of almost all power in the world that we live in, and the truth is, for the most part, it's being used against you. And one of the ways in which you can see this is that your responsibility and your power over money is being taken away from you. And most people very readily give this up. Becoming a better player of the money game is a key life skill. Most of us are by default walking around with like a huge exploit me financially target painted on our backs. Think about it, like a very common thing to see. You go to an electronics store and it's like a big fancy new OLED TV or something, and there's going to be a sign on it that says, you can have this TV for only $90 a month, and take it home now and start paying later. You don't have to pay until 3 months from now or something. And of course, if you read the fine print of this, it's some horrendous interest rate, and if you add it all up, you're basically overpaying by a huge margin for this TV. And you're also putting yourself at financial risk, basically, because if you can't make a payment, you immediately have a snowball of trouble coming your way. What does this tell us about the world and the average person in the world? It tells us that the average consumer can be readily exploited financially. That companies can basically rely on the average consumer not reading the fine print, and rely on the fact that the average consumer probably can't even make sense of the numbers really very well, even if they do see it all laid out. Doesn't really do the math, or can't do the math of what does this actually mean, right? This price at this rate with this interest rate and so on, what does that actually bottom line mean for me? Companies can rely on the fact that most people are not going to do this. At some point last year, I put together a how to build personal wealth course that's available for free, by the way. I'll link to it below. And we made a couple of videos on the topic of money and some podcast episodes. And maybe if you were following us, you were like, what's going on here, right? Is this suddenly becoming a personal finance channel? Are we no longer about personal development? Or are we just going to be talking about money? And no, that's not the case. The reason we got into the topic of money, and the reason we're making these resources on the topic of money available, is because you can't afford to be naive about the game of money. The truth is, you're a player of the game of money, whether you have thought about it or not, and whether you want to be or not. You live in a world where money is one of the foundational things that's going on. It's one of the most basic foundational things that we use to coordinate human effort. And yeah, you can try to opt out of the money game. You can try to go, live in the forest somewhere as a hermit or something, and maybe you can do that, but it's pretty difficult. For most of us, we need money in order to have freedom, in order to be able to live a self-determined life and do what we want with our time. And the less money we have, the less power and freedom we have to live the life that we want. But right there is a potential trap. If you simply think, well, if only I had more money, that would solve all of my problems. That's already the wrong way to think about it. Because, well, of course, yes, if you, won the lottery or something, again, the existence of the lottery shows that most of us are just waiting to be victimized financially, right? But if you won the lottery, you just got a whole pile of money that you can retire on forever from one day to the next, then yes, maybe that would solve many of your problems, and that would be good. But this is not going to happen, okay? It's just not going to happen. So just thinking about if only I had more money is not useful. A better way to think about it is, how can I become a better player of the money game? How can I increase my knowledge and skills around money? How can I stop being one of these victims? In my opinion, this is just one of those base life skills. As a human being alive today in this society, you must have at least a basic understanding of how money works. And you must have some set of rules by which you play the money game. At the very least, you must be a deliberate player of the game and not just drifting. And I think this is also true if you are totally non-materialistic, if you're, a spiritually focused a minimalist, whatever, even if you're not interested in money. I think this is still true. Now, let me clarify something. when I talk about learning how to play the game of money, I'm not saying that everybody should become an options and derivatives expert and start playing the stock market or something like that. In fact, most people really shouldn't do any of that. And there's definitely you don't have to go into that level of financial interest. You don't have to start reading the Wall Street Journal and being interested in economic news or anything like that. I'm talking about this in a much more practical sense, about how do you earn money, what do you do with your money, how do you manage your own money between what do you save, what do you spend, how do you spend, do you use a credit card, do you have savings and investments, and what kinds of investments, and so on. What is your longer term plan? Like, how do you use money to support your lifestyle, your life goals, and your longer term plan? For most people, there's just not much going on there. Maybe you have a savings account next to a checking account, and that already puts you into a minority, but there's no longer term plan, and there's no set of principles by which you play this game. So this, I would say, is the bar to clear, right? The answer to the question, do you have a set of principles, a set of rules that you have determined for yourself about what you do with money, how you handle your own money, and does that support your long-term plan? The answer to that question must be yes. That's the bare minimum. If the answer is no, or I'm not sure, you've got some leveling up to do. Now, I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of details about what to do and how to do it and why to do it in this video, because that's what the free course is for. So we'll link to that below. You can get our course completely for free that walks you through everything you need to know in order to put together a financial plan for yourself that will lead to personal wealth and financial freedom. And this is free. This is 100% free, no catch involved, because I never want to be in a position where I charge money for this kind of thing. I don't want to be like, give me money and I'll teach you how to make more money. That's just, there's something sleazy about that I don't want to do. So this is free, and it's always going to be free. So all the practical steps, the how-to, you can get that through the link below. The goal here is to increase your power level, essentially, right? To make you more powerful and more capable as you go through this life. That is the goal of everything we do at Ikario. And when it comes to money, this is one of the things where it's actually shocking how low most people's power level is. Not that long ago, not that many generations ago, basically every human being was capable of surviving in the wilderness, right? That was the default. Like we knew how to actually live in and survive in the world, minus most of the comforts we enjoy. And it is crazy to think how small we've shrunk since then in our individual power and capability. And I'm not saying that we should all, go back to the wild or become survivors, but I think it's an interesting perspective to consider. Money is the source of almost all power in the world that we live in, and the truth is, for the most part, it's being used against you. And one of the ways in which you can see this is that your responsibility and your power over money is being taken away from you. And most people very readily give this up. Our money and things that bring wealth and value in our lives is usually left up to other people, right? It's like other people's responsibility. There's a middleman who takes care of everything. This is one of the reasons that I think crypto, and I'll just keep this to Bitcoin to keep it simple, right? Bitcoin is very interesting in that sense, because Bitcoin is basically self-sovereign money. It is money without a middleman. It is in that sense like digital cash or digital gold. And this is not about, whether Bitcoin is a good idea or a bad idea, whether you should own it or whatever. It's just as an example of thinking about your personal power level when it comes to money, and the average person's personal power level when it comes to money. Bitcoin is like digital cash or digital gold in the sense that you own it. It's not someone else custodying it or holding it for you in your place, right? You own it and you're responsible for it. If you own a bunch of gold bars and you leave them lying around in your front yard, then very likely someone's going to come by and swipe them. And then, well, what can you do? Well, you can report it to the police or something, right? But if you report the theft to the police, they'll probably file it and you'll never hear from them again. It was basically your fault. right? You have to make sure, if you own gold bars, you have to be like, well, maybe I need to own a safe. I need to make sure that this is, well anchored somewhere. It's a good, strong safe. Maybe I want to have a security camera there, whatever. It's your responsibility to keep this safe. It's not someone else's responsibility. This is the case with Bitcoin. If you own Bitcoin, you own it. It is not a bank holding the Bitcoin for you. It is entirely up to you, and nobody can interfere with what you do with your Bitcoin. There's no government or central entity that can step in and tell you, no, we're not allowing this transaction. This transaction is, flagged in our system or whatever. That also means that it's up to you to lose it. If you don't manage your keys to your Bitcoin well, if you store them on a file that can easily be stolen, or on a sticky note on your monitor, then someone else can simply take your Bitcoin from you, just like someone can pick up a gold bar that you left outside on your yard. And what's crazy is that this is one of the big problems with Bitcoin, because most people can't be trusted to keep a password safe. Most people can't be trusted with the idea that, hey, you have sovereign ownership of this thing. You have to make sure that this is safe. Most people can't be trusted not to do something absolutely stupid with a password that protects a large amount of value. This is just another example that shows how much we have retreated into a victim role, how much we have been infantilized, where there's always an expectation that someone else has to be responsible, someone else has to take care of us. Now, how crazy is it that this is like too much to ask? And I would say pay close attention to, say, politicians and other people who are usually in positions of great wealth and power, who will be talking to you about how unsafe this is and how it's a bad idea and you shouldn't do this, right? Instead of having self-sovereign ownership over your money and making your own decisions about money, instead, you should leave it all up to someone else. For example, me, your friendly neighborhood politician, who has way more money than you, by the way. So what I'm getting at here is that I think there are two levels to this. The first level is simply learn how to play the game of money, learn how to take care of your own finances, learn how to put together a plan, and play the game of money in such a way that you gain real wealth and freedom. Over time, over a long enough time horizon, this is a very real, very achievable possibility for probably pretty much everyone who watches this video. So that's worth doing just for your own interests. The other level of this is that I think it is better for the world, it's better for the society that we live in if we have more people who empower themselves, who become better at playing the money game and stop being, these like easily manipulated victims where, the people in power, the politicians are pulling your strings, and everyone who's trying to sell you something is pulling your strings, and you're being financially exploited left, right, and center, and you're not even aware of it. And the less of that we have, the better it is for everyone. So this is why we're going to be talking about playing the game of money in some of our content, and this is how it fits into the overall ikario mission of giving you the tools to empower yourself to live a self-determined life. One of the things we'll definitely cover here in future videos is what you can do if you're an employee. We've talked a lot about entrepreneurial stuff, and we'll continue to do so, but also from the perspective of an employee, what can you do to increase your value in the marketplace to be able to command a higher salary? I have to say that I see a lot of really misguided advice on this, and I come from a perspective of I've been an employer much more than I've been an employee. So I've been an employer for many, many years, and I think from this perspective I can give a lot of advice that most people don't consider from the employee perspective. I think there are loads and loads of mistakes that people make that cost them potential career advancements and salary advancements. And this is just another example of it, where most people are just clueless and they're not able to play this game to their advantage. So that's something that we can get into in future videos. And this is also a good opportunity for you to ask questions about this. I hope that this perspective of thinking about it from a bigger picture perspective and thinking about how can you put together a plan that works for you gives you a different way to think about this, and it might bring up new questions, it might bring up things that you haven't thought about before. So if you have questions about this, if there are things that are unclear, that you'd like me to cover in future videos, leave a comment below. And like I said, we have a completely free course on how to build personal wealth, literally starting from scratch, covering everything you need to know. And you can get that simply by clicking the link in the description.